Hey everybody, my name is Dion, and this is Daryl.
Yo, yo.
Welcome to Where We Stand, a series where we talk about the games we recently played and discuss how much we may or may not have enjoyed them. Today, we're going to be talking about New World Beta, which was only available on the PC. Now that we're queued up and ready to go, let's get started.
And as per usual, before we get too far into it, let's talk about our general experience with MMOs. Starting with you, Dion. What you used to?
So, I'm an avid MMO player. I've been in MMOs since World of Warcraft, back in early Kata, End of Wrath. I was leveling at End of Wrath and kind of got to max level in Kata. And that was my main, first experience. I did raiding, I was in guilds, I did all of that. After that, I didn't want to be raiding anymore in a guild. Final Fantasy, it came out. I got involved in that alpha, played Final Fantasy regularly for a while. Dived into Guild Wars 2, ESO, recently started Sword of Legends Online. So I've been really into the MMO space for a while. Before I actually got into paying for World of Warcraft, I actually played some free-to-play titles like Fly for Fun was one of them. Maybe I'm sure I played some other ones.
You played Rift, I think.
I played Rift for a good amount of time in college, actually.
Yeah.
So, I've been an avid MMO player for a while. I always loved MMOs, still do, like playing them. I haven't played with a lot of people, usually solo now, but a lot of experience with MMOs. How about you, Daryl?
So, for the most part, I'm not big on MMOs. I've always been intrigued by the genre, but it always felt intimidating to me from a distance. But my general ones that I tend to go between are Final Fantasy XIV, which is my main MMO of choice these days, but I used to play Guild Wars 2 for a bit. No, more than a bit. I finished base game, and I think I was halfway or almost done with the first expansion, one of the two. Then I had, for a while I also played Terra with my brothers. And then I know I played Rift and Secret World, but those were very on and off, so I don't even count them for the most part. But my secondary MMO choice would be Black Desert Online, just because I like the way it does its thing. I'm going to put it that way. It's very laid back, very casual, very solo friendly, but 14 is my main one. So that's my gist of that's the gist of my experience with MMOs.
So then let's get a little bit more into New World. So the story overview for New World, which is pretty simple. You play your own custom character, as every other MMO, who has awoken on the shores of Ethereum. You learn the world has a mysterious power named Azoth. And you start your adventure learning the mysteries of the land. So it's pretty much setting you up for a grand adventure into, a new experience, which I would say is typical.
Yeah.
Nothing special.
Pretty standard.
At all. Yeah, and I didn't really pay attention to the story going through, especially since it's beta. I like to experience that at release. How about you? Did you have any experience with the story?
It doesn't have enough where it's gonna grab me or anything. It's very much it felt like the story just explains why the world is why it is. I believe Azoth is the I'm gonna call it element or the power or whatnot that essentially is the reason why you respawn. You don't die. That's canon. When you die, you respawn. Everyone dies and respawns and whatnot. The only way you can die is if you're corrupted, and honestly, that's a gameplay thing we'll talk about later. But at the moment, as things stand, it's just a means for why the world exists and why it is the way it is. But it had a very strong start and whatnot. I liked that. It's just a matter of time to see if Amazon wants to do anything with it, or if it's simply going to be a backdrop for what ideally would be more content in the future. But in the meantime, let's talk about how far we actually got with the beta. How far did you get, Dion?
So I played approximately 40 hours. I was really into it. Made it to level 29. I took the time to experience a lot of the systems. I did a lot of crafting. I played multiple builds and multiple weapons that I felt that I'd be interested in. And actually settled on a weapon I didn't expect, the bow. I ended up playing mostly a ranger type character in the end. Started off heavily on magic. I did some small amount of PvP. I really wanted to try to get into that. I haven't always been a big PvPer, so that's something I want to really experience in an MMO. So I'm really going for that. Did a little bit of questing, did some world exploration, and I did the first dungeon, which is exploration actually. So I did that as well. Which was a cool experience. I ran it probably 5 times, something like that. How about you, Daryl?
So for the most part, I played about 12 hours of it, and I got to level 18. I experienced the crafting, some PvP and questing and whatnot. It felt very, again, very standard, but even then, just the PvP in general, which I don't normally do in MMOs because it doesn't always intrigue me. I know I did PvP for a little bit in Guild Wars 2, surprisingly, because it's just fun in Guild Wars 2. In this game, I had some fun with it as well, unless you're, getting, I'm going to say raided, but more like unless you're just going about your quests, you see one guy, you think, I could take some pot shots at this guy. You remember that, Dion. And then we got like 3 other people coming from behind, and we had to just book it. That was pretty funny.
Oh yeah, that's a big part of our gameplay.
Yep, we did things, we ran. We did things, we ran. But that was fun. That was fun for what it was. And I could tell the community feels very strongly about that. But overall, that's about as far as we got with the beta. I'd say that was good. That was time well spent for the most part. Speaking of time well spent, let's talk about the world design and how long it really takes to get around the world and whatnot, with how big and involved the map is. We could go deep into that if you want to kick that part off.
So I will say I like that it was a seamless world. I mean, this is the thing that irritates me the most about Final Fantasy versus something like WoW. The world is seamless. It feels like one world. It doesn't feel separated. And it feels big. And that's probably because of the no mount decision. Because I don't think it's bigger than a lot of other games we played, but it feels that way. You have to travel everywhere, which has positives and negatives. I mean, you play BDL, it's the same situation.
BDL's map is actually significantly bigger, and you're still on foot a majority of that time.
Yep,
you do have a mount, and it's still big.
Yeah, and it's still big. Yeah, BDO is ridiculous. This game is not as big as BDO, and it's just coming out, of course, so it doesn't have any expansions. But I think it's still really nice. It has a lot of things going for it, and it's beautiful. It's definitely beautiful. And you can go anywhere right from the beginning. Yes, you might face some trouble, big mobs, but I think that open, go where you want atmosphere really contributes to feeling like a world that you're in versus feeling segregated, fake, take you out of it kind of situation. And, the beauty helps too.
A lot of the locations I can still remember to this day, even though we didn't play the beta that long ago. It wasn't that long ago, but, it's good that it still sits, that I still know where everything is in my head, because a lot of the locations are distinct in their environments and whatnot. Not to mention that's all interactable. Well, most of it is interactable, especially if you're getting involved with crafting and whatnot and harvesting and etc. So you'll know where to go get one item, you'll know where to go get another item, you'll find some wildlife here that you won't find elsewhere. The world is alive, and it definitely feels that way, especially with all the players running around. It's definitely a sight to behold, and that's one of the many positives of this game. Standard, but it's still one of the many positives.
Well, I'll actually give a caveat to that, because this is one thing BDO does well. There's multiple different enemy types, different areas. I do feel like New World does struggle to being too similar a little bit in some places. It has some distinct areas, but then it has a lot of areas too that feel similar. Like, especially in the beginning, I think the first 3 or 4 zones are just they're like that foresty standard area. It's nothing like super special. They have like mountains on one side that's a little different, but there's some areas in the beginning that really make it feel like it's too similar. Right. I think this is also very true of the towns. The different towns.
Yes, that's the part.
They look the same, except they have slight theme differences. That's what it feels like. Like the one that there's like a boat. Like one's like in a kind of a shipwrecked area, and then one's like a town, but it still feels similar. It looks similar. I mean, you have to really see it to experience it.
No, it makes sense.
You notice.
I definitely notice. Like, I remember when I was running around, because some of the, and this is gonna bleed into gameplay just a little bit. So I'm gonna say this now, so we don't repeat ourselves later. There are some missions. Again, it's a pretty standard MMO so far. So you're gonna have your fetch quest. You're gonna have your things where you have to go look for stuff. I'd almost argue there are only like 4 building types outside of whatever's the main hub in each territory. because I feel like I know my way through each and every building, and that does save on time. Don't get me wrong, that saves on time and resources, but they really got to beef that bit up because I know the layout of every single kind of bar. You can destroy to make it look decrepit. You can make it look desolate. You can make it look beautiful. You can change the color scheme. It doesn't matter. I know where everything is. So stuff like that makes it feel repetitive, ironically, compared to where the locations are. Like, as soon as you enter any urban area, typically you'll know what to expect. But when you're out there in the world in general, in the wild, that's where it'll start varying a little more, but not that much more. So while it's gorgeous and definitely worth, a trip around the map, assuming you don't get one shot by a mob or a player if you have PvP on, they do need to add more to it in terms of environment and variety, because that is something that BDO does have it beat on. And I know that BDO's been around longer and etc., but that's something that they're going to need to keep up with if they want to keep this world going. BDO, there are a lot of different kinds of buildings, a lot of different kinds of mobs for different areas and whatnot. It really makes those areas feel like I can find this one type of creature in this area all the way across the map, versus like an oasis in the middle of the Black Desert, versus a New World where you'll find a pig here and that same exact pig somewhere else. And I know they're pigs, but when the game likes to differentiate between one wolf and the other, you know how they have us hunting for those sometimes. It doesn't help with the variety. You kind of makes it feel smaller than it actually is. That's where I'm going to wrap that up.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't think there's much more to say about the world. So since you hinted at gameplay, let's kind of go over these gameplay systems. I want to start with factions. We'll kind of go through this quickly.
Sure.
At the start of the game, you kind of pick between three factions: the Marauders, Covenant, and the Syndicate. Marauders are kind of your warrior race. They're ready to fight.
They're very self-serving for the most part.
Right.
They're
right.
the
power means all.
Yeah. And
Covenant is your religious sect.
Yep.
They serve, nothing else to say.
They serve the spark. Do you want to spread the light? Then join us. Kingdom Hearts is light.
And then Syndicate, which is
essentially
very, I don't know,
like the seedy.
Mysterious.
They're like the seedy underbelly. Like if you were an assassin, you'd probably be with the Syndicate. They're kind of shady. They're the shady group.
So those are your three factions. You choose one of them. It determines who you can play with and who you're against. It's very simple. It's very self-explanatory. Very similar to what you see in other MMOs. Maybe the only difference is there's 3 instead of 2. I get it. So that's your factions. Let's go into something a little more interesting to the game, which is their character customization. So this game has a free class system, so you kind of create your class based on the weapon, speccing your weapon, which is awesome, and your armor type, and you can kind of figure out, what you want to be. For instance, I had a rapier, which scales off dexterity and intelligence, and used a fire staff, that's intelligence, and I used intelligence. Most of my stats were intelligence, and I actually switched between medium and light armor. So between that, I made pretty much a spell sword type class. So that was my class that I made from having the opportunity. And there's like a multitude of weapons you can choose from.
Yeah, personally, I went with I went classic sword and shield, but I also carried a gun. Just because I wanted a musket. I love the bow and arrow, but I was like, if you're going to give me the option to use a musket, I'm going to use a musket. And I used that musket a lot. It was a lot of fun to use. For the most part, I was a medium armor class, but I primarily used my gun and used the sword and shield if I felt that if anyone got too close, essentially. Block, counter with a slash, use whatever special ability I may or may not have unlocked and whatnot, which... There's some decent customization for the most part. Not visually. Visually, it's a nice base, but it's about on par with Destiny when it comes to visual customization. But in terms of gameplay, yeah, the free class system really works for it.
Agreed, and I had I used some other classes at the time. I think the only downside here is the armor is a little weird. Mm-hmm. You can put 4 pieces of medium and 1 piece of light armor.
Yeah.
And you're going to be light classification and you get to roll. Same thing if you go all heavy with one piece of medium, you get medium. That doesn't work, and that's if you don't use the shield, which the shield doesn't give you stats unless you have it equipped and using sword and board.
Yeah.
Only time it gives you stats. I think that's a weird thing. I know that's a specific, but that kind of would be my only negative. I think that'll be fixed after they reevaluate it. We can go a little bit into combat, which is pretty interesting. It's an action combat system with multiple weapons.
Yep.
It's kind of akin to, and don't hate me for saying this, but it's kind of akin to ESO, which is a combat system I don't like, but I do like this one. It's weightier than ESO's, which is the biggest problem with ESOs, and there's an animation lock versus you can kind of just break animation. You can't do that on this game. You gotta go with the animation lock. So you have action combat, your heavy swing, your light swing, and then you only have a few abilities, right? Versus having a whole bunch of abilities. You get 3, ESO's 5. It's kind of similar to that.
This game, very much depending on what weapon you use. Me using the sword and shield and the musket, my build was very much for single target. So while I did have an AoE ability with my sword, for the most part, the best I could do was fight single enemies one at a time for the most part, which meant a lot of fighting a little bit and then running away. Fighting a little bit, then running away. I remember I had to drag a boss out of a cave when people were looking for them. And I was like, they're down here. I got it. I got it. And everyone else jumped on them. And thankfully, so long as you landed at least 2 hits, it counts for you too. Not a lot of MMOs do that. Some of them are like, no, you gotta land more hits. Or whatnot, or you have to land the finishing blow or something like that. I can't speak for which ones. It's just not a thing I see a lot, if I want to put it that way.
True, and the combat, I do have actually a comment that you probably didn't experience because you didn't go as far. When I was doing the exploration, I found that the combat did get stale-ish, and the reason why is so they used to have this whole stagger thing that's gone. Not a big deal for me. I never played with the stagger system, but playing without anything there, it does get you pressing left click a lot because it's an action combat game, but there's not more to it. And I think that is something that disappoints, and I get why they do it. For PvP, it's perfect. For PvE, it may get a slightly boring in some cases. I will say I did like using, because I eventually switched to the Ranger, like I mentioned, and I did like using the bow and arrow, and I was able to shoot different things, and I had to aim, and I love that. I am 100% more in love with the action combat system than tab target. I just would like to see either maybe a combo system, maybe go back to more Dark Souls, which is what they modeled it off of. I don't know. I think there is some healthy medium that they need to find, and I don't think they're there yet.
The combat in this game feels like that's the opposite issue when it comes to PvP versus PvE that BDO has. BDO is very combo heavy and combo oriented and whatnot. Like I play Sorceress in that game, and I have so many combos and whatnot I have to keep track of in my head unless I want to put them on the hotbar, which most people say just memorize the combos and whatnot. That's a lot smoother than pressing the keys. And it's a lot more satisfying, but that's a lot of combos to keep track of. So it's a spectacle in the open world. PvP, in my experience in BDO, was a bit of a nightmare, at least for me, to some extent. And that's true. Because there's so much you have to do all the time. So there's a caveat to that. And I feel like if they're gonna go, for New World, if they're gonna go in this direction and be like, okay, this is what we want, then yeah, I would argue, yes, we need to lay more into either the Souls inspiration, or at the very least, we need to expand what abilities you can have and whatnot, or at least expand your combos to some extent. Because the reason I kept using the musket was because I got bored with the sword after a while. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, block 1, 2, 3, 4. It gets boring after a while. While the musket, I'm just like, I'm aiming and I'm shooting. At the very least, the most I can experiment with that is where I'm shooting, which is more varied than 1, 2, 3, 4. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I'd agree. They need to find a way to really differentiate combat. Maybe add new weapons. Maybe add a subclass for weapons. I'm not sure. Right? Even though it's a classless system, just something to like shift the balance to make the combat feel less repetitive. Maybe bleed some skills over into each other. I'm not sure. But with that said, let's move on to crafting and content types, which I think crafting could just slot right into content types.
Okay, well, let's start with crafting then as part of a content type. So crafting, I thought was very, very good actually. I would actually, don't hate me for saying this, I mostly play Final Fantasy as well. Mm-hmm. I think I like this crafting better than any other crafting I've experienced. Why do I say that? Because it feels more natural as the experience goes. Other games that we play, I've played with crafting, don't ever grab me. And it's because it feels so separated. And I'll say BDO probably would be the closest to having a system very similar to New World, except for it's just a little different.
Especially since you can walk away during BDO while you're crafting.
I think I don't like that aspect of it.
I mean, that's fair. You're not as engaged, but at the very least, you don't have to sit there and constantly monitor it. It's a caveat.
True. I don't like it because it makes me have to leave my computer on, or I feel like I'm losing. Yeah. In this game, I don't have that, but when you're out in the world, it's just so cool watching the trees fall. It feels like a part of the world. It feels like you're in there, a part of it. And then you come back and you craft things, and those craft things in this version, some of that stuff wasn't useful yet, but I can see where it'd be useful.
Cooking food is a lot of fun.
Cooking's great. Like I just like it. And so what I don't like about Final Fantasy, and maybe I need to experience it more, which I'm actually starting to do, is I don't like how separated it feels. Like you have to do your whole own thing with it, and that just really doesn't make me happy for it. And I have to really focus on it, which I'm just not a crafter. I'm not a person that likes crafting.
Unless you make a macro, but at that point you have to research making a macro. You have to make sure the skills.
But it's still separate. Like you still have to go change class and be a part of it. And I know what you mean. Like that aspect.
I do understand what you mean.
I like it being more of a secondary task that is kind of within your whole experience. It feels more natural here, and I like that. Other than that, I mean, there's cool things you can craft. There's like things you can add to it, so it's also has a lot more systems in it than normal crafting, like World of Warcraft crafting, for instance.
Yeah.
Similar to Final Fantasy crafting, where you have all those other things as a part of it, except the skills and stuff like that. But there's more to it, and I think that's what's important. It has some challenging, different aspects to it that makes you make decisions on what materials you use, which cost you money, which affects the economy. And I think that is the big deal, that it can just do so much for your experience when other games are not able to capture that magic. And I think that's what really pulls it in for.
Exactly. And to piggyback on that real quick before we move along, crafting also counts towards your overall XP. So not only does your crafting skill level up so you can learn more recipes, but you also get experience points for your your character in of itself, because everything you do is attributed to your character, which is a nice plus.
Dang it, I forgot about that. And that is and that's a key aspect that really keeps you engaged. Wow. Well, we talked about great crafting is. Let's talk about
something not as great, the questing.
Yeah. And no game in MMOs has good questing besides Secret World. I'm just gonna say it.
I agree. I can agree with that.
Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic. Yep. SWTOR does have good story. Questing's still not great. Final Fantasy, story's amazing. I would say the questing is awful, but the story, with the result of the main story questing, is good. But running around, it's just none of that is always fun, right? No one does a great job with it. I think that there's other aspects that people bring in which makes that experience of leveling not as bad. And I think Final Fantasy, Star Wars, Knights of the Republic get that with story. Other games get that with other activities to do. BDO gets it with just grind the hell out of it.
Yeah, essentially.
Leveling forever anyway. But it's not, you don't have to do questing. So, it changes per game. I just don't think questing here is probably bottom of the barrel, I have to say. Because you just go, It's a lot of running back and forth, more than Final Fantasy. Maybe because you can teleport in Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
But you gotta do a lot of back and forth. Very similar quest. Enemy diversity is not great. I mean, there's just nothing.
You go here, you kill this. You go here, you grab like 8 chests. You go over here, talk to this guy, maybe give him an item or whatever, and then you have to return back to town, and then you're done. You'll have follow-up quests after that. Some of it that does like expand mini stories, but again, those you'll get to a point where unless you care about what that character's saying, the plus side is the quests are so similar to each other that you could just be like, I'm gonna take your quest, do them all,
and just go
speed through, get that XP. Outside of the main narrative, where the main narrative, at the very least, if you're interested in the story, the quest in and of itself is not anything unique, at least as of the beta, but at the very least, that's the main story, so you might want to pay more attention, because they're likely going to take you somewhere else, or etc. But the side quests, they're there for busy work, to get you XP, heck, get you gear, and whatnot. They're a checklist. They're
checklist. And the town board quests are the worst offender, and I hate them. I know they give you the most XP, but I hate them. I'm sorry, I really do. And there's other forms of gameplay in this game that are so much better that even though I spent most of my time questing, just exploring the world and doing this and killing monsters made it worth it, right? Like, even though it was like this part of the quest, I enjoyed the combat and the world, which even though I have bad things to say about the combat, I liked it. So that kind of saved it for me. So yeah, there's not, and then you can't even do the quest with friends. Like, seriously? I just don't get it.
Which is weird. Like, in 14 you can't do it, but that's typically because the quests are tied to the story, and even when you are caught up with the story, you still can't do it. But here, there's genuinely no excuse.
Yeah, like, I mean, I blame 14 as well, because they could definitely make those little single player stories be multiplayer. But anyway.
Actually, hold up. To some extent, depending on the quest or whatever you're doing, if it's like a kill quest, then yeah, you're going to get credit for those. And I don't know, did New World do that too? Like, if you killed something, do I get the... Okay, so...
Nope.
So at the very least, 14 does that, but both...
If you're all on the same quest, yeah.
If you're on the same quest.
This game doesn't.
Yeah.
This game doesn't even do that, and that's like the minimum requirement. But the fact that you can't even get the same quest, I don't know. They could have just stuck with... If they were going to do this, they could have made it a standard questing system and not even have to worry about it. I would have been fine with a good narrative. They could have stole Final Fantasy to a T. They could even copy WoW. I would have been fine with it. It would have been better than what we got. But the questing doesn't kill the game. It's not great. And I just want to get that across. It's
basically work for levels.
Yeah, basically work for level. Let's talk open world PvP.
Oh boy. So in open world PvP, to put it in a nutshell, you, depending on what faction you're with, you all take control of different sections of the map and whatnot. I'm starting with the grandiose bit because that's the main reason people do PvP, not just because it's fun to kill each other for the most part, but because you want to own these territories. As there's a sense of camaraderie with it. And oh boy, marauders were everywhere. The map was mostly green.
Hey, that was our server choice. That was our fault.
I mean, yeah, for the most part. But that was an incentive because there are wars that could be started in each section of the map. I think per territory and whatnot, there could be a war started if the faction that owns or is currently leading that territory is low enough. Then you'll see players flood into that territory and essentially fight to get that bar filled up so that they will own it instead. It's pretty interesting, actually, and it's something that I'd honestly really like to do.
Let's expand on that so that our audience understands. It's the open world PvP that gets you to the sieges. So when you're going into those zones, you're doing these faction quests that get you. It's like simple quests you got to do, which is a whole nother problem. But it's simple quests you do that you may run into someone else in PvP, and those quests are what push you to a siege.
Besides that, I think that pretty much spells out everything that you really need to know about PvP. You can turn it on and off. So if you have it off, then no one can attack you and you can't attack them. But if you want to do the PvP quest that your faction has, which do come with some experience, I think, do you get more experience for the PvP faction quests than you do your PvP?
You get more faction.
Okay. You get more currency with the faction if you do the PvP stuff. So you're going to want to turn that on for that, even if you're not fighting anybody. You need to have the PvP on to do the PvP quests, which, you may not like that. Maybe you do. It doesn't really matter. It didn't really affect us too much for the most part, outside of the very first time we did it.
Yeah, and I got to do more of it and play it. I think the PvP is pretty good. It's pretty, I wouldn't say the word balanced is the word to go with necessarily, but it's fun. Like, it's a fun part of the game.
Definitely.
And it does make questing a little more interesting, because obviously the quests aren't that fun. So when you're playing with, if you have a person you're playing with, and they can help you, even if they and you suck at PvP, which is our case, you can go in the world and have some fun with the PvP, or fight someone, or kill a few people. We definitely killed a few people just running around.
Yeah.
PvP on.
The amount of times you've done it, and I just felt bad for them, because they'd often be like 10 levels lower than us. I'm like, they didn't even have a chance, man. Why would
Hey, the level scaling's great. They had opportunities to kill me for sure.
Oh, they
just didn't think so.
Yeah. It's just funny to see it happen. You hate it for it to happen to you, but it's funny when you do it to other people. That's a messed up statement.
With that note, let's go into explorations. Explorations are the I guess I'm only going to talk about this because you didn't get an opportunity to do this, right?
Nope, I have no idea what this is.
Explorations are dungeons. I did one. I did the first dungeon. Don't remember the names. Don't ask me. But it was a good experience. It's a basic dungeon. I can say if you're going for a classic dungeon experience, I don't think it's there yet, because the way it kind of works with tanking is a little weird. It definitely wasn't afterthought how it was added, but we know that just how the game developed. But I thought it was fun. Like, it was fun. It looks freaking great. Can I say how good the dungeon looks? Wow. Environmentally, just beautiful design. Even the bosses are nicely designed. And they're not unique necessarily. They can be a lot of reskins throughout the dungeon, but it's a good experience, and I did like them. I do not think they were amazing, at least for the first one. I did see others on stream that I think is experienced that looked really cool. So
yeah,
and it even had some really cool mechanics that were somewhat difficult. I also saw some easy pushover ones. So I think this area is probably B-ish area. It needs a little bit of improvement, but it's a fun experience. You're not really missing out on anything. But it's something that it's really fun to do, I think. I actually think I liked it more than a lot of the things I was doing while questing. So that's good news. And then sieges, they exist. They're 50 versus 50. They last 30 minutes, which is really good for if you're a person with not a lot of time, and you can join a pretty good guild. Neither one of us experienced sieges. We didn't play the game enough to get to that. That's something I would do at release. But that, I just want to say that, that option exists. It's something you can play, and it looked really fun. I did see other people playing it. I thought it was really cool. I can't wait to do it.
That delayed release.
Yeah, delayed released.
It happens.
So I think now we should give our final thoughts. How about you lead us, Daryl?
It's a really, really good start, especially for Amazon, who's been killing their projects left and right. Don't kill this one. This one has potential, and I want to see you really lay into this and build it up into something great. It's standard, but it's a lot of fun, and if there's enough players and whatnot online, and you're playing with friends, you can easily lose hours to it, because it's mindless enough that you're just moving. You just keep going. You keep moving. You keep grooving. I'm a little worried about what content will be. I'm gonna say endgame, at least so far as the base game. Assuming they're gonna release expansions and not just make free updates or whatever. I want to see the big picture once the whole game is out. But in the meantime, very good start, and I'm interested.
All right. Well, my closing thoughts. Despite going through the whole thing again, even now, and thinking of some of the negatives of the game, I really enjoyed playing this game. I liked it more than any MMO that I've been playing recently. And that includes Final Fantasy, which I thoroughly enjoy but haven't been as engaged, probably because there's not new content at this time. But it's such a fun experience, and it really gets me into the game. I like that it's action combat. That's also a piece that pushes me in. I really like that aspect, as I always like action combat over any other type of combat in games. It just feels more realistic, maybe, because of its action combat.
I get you.
I do like the explorations. I like that there's a somewhat of PvP focused, as I don't have a game that really feels that itch right now, and it's an itch I have for a while, and I'd love to scratch it, and this would be, the game to do it. In addition, I think the world design is great. Like, I think, even though they have the similarity issue, I think that from an overall standpoint, I love that it's one seamless world. It really draws me in, similar to how World of Warcraft used to draw me in because of the one single world that you get to explore. It feels like its own thing. BDO does the same. It's one beautiful world you can see. And I think that part of an MMO is, before I thought it was an optional aspect, but for me it's becoming something that I require. And I think this game hits that. I do like the crafting. I could see myself really spending a lot of time here. And I will be playing in release in September now. Not August, end of September.
Assuming it doesn't move again.
True. I will say, as far as content, I expect that the beginning, obviously, I think it's $40. You'll get your $40 out of it from leveling and doing that experience. When you get max level, you may have a little bit of a problem. There's data mine, weapons and stuff like that are coming out quickly, hopefully, and new areas coming out. So it's not like they don't have things in the works, but who knows how long that will take. And I just want to make sure that we get there. I think we'll get our polish. I think the game is really polished as is, and I think it'll be even more polished at release. And that's what they're taking 2 months to do. I do have concern, not on the cash shop, but on monetization in general. I do want them to be able to make some profit or income so that they can continue supporting the game. I just don't know how they're going to do it. Are they going to follow a Guild Wars 2 buy-to-play style? Are they going to follow ESO's buy-to-play style, which I like ESO's. It's pretty simple, easy. I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know which way they're going to go with their buy-to-play. Like, if there's every new content drop going to cost money? I don't know. And I think I have some concerns there. I like to know that when going into buy-to-play, because it could go so many different ways. Where subscription and free-to-play, it's very obvious where we're going. Buy-to-play, it's always a little question mark, but I will say usually buy-to-play is my favorite. So,
and I'd say on the cash shop side of things, I've heard that that some of the things they're interested in are like implementing some form of time savers and etc. for people who don't have as much time and whatnot. And all I can say is, I don't like that. I actually hate it. But if you're going to implement it, please don't do the thing you're tempted, that a lot of companies would be tempted to do, and balance the game around that to try and get people to buy those. That's how you kill it. Don't do that.
I mean, the game is super long leveling, so it's already balanced enough to make it happen. I will say, though, they did agree to not do that for at least a year. So you won't have that. You'll have cosmetic only in the beginning. But it all depends, right? All depends on how much money they make.
Yeah, that's what it really comes down to. So I'll say this much: if you're interested in New World, get it, level the fuck out of it as quickly as you can, but before things start, grinding to a halt if they decide to go to the dark side. I hope not, but we never really know. Heck, they could even change their mind and not do it at all. So we'll see what happens. But with that, I think that's all we've got for now. Thanks to all of you for stopping through to listen here at DuoQueue. If you think we might have missed something or glossed over something big, or might need to expand on something further, feel free to say so in the comments. Don't forget to share and leave a like. Next time you're waiting for a party or searching for a lobby, feel free to tune in again while you wait. See you later. A whole new world. Okay. Don't sue me, Disney, please.